he had accidentally reserved a room at Seabreeze Motel instead of Seabreeze Resort. A minor detail, right? Not exactly. The moment John arrived, he knew something was off. Instead of a grand lobby with a chandelier and smiling concierges, he was greeted by a sleepy receptionist behind a scratched counter. The pool was an inflatable kiddie pool in the parking lot, and instead of the gentle sound of ocean waves, he heard a construction crew jackhammering away next door. Still, John, ever the optimist, decided to make the best of it. He dragged his suitcase up a creaky flight of stairs and entered his room only to be greeted by a carpet that looked like it had been through a war and an air conditioner that sounded like it was trying to take flight. Luxury experience, my foot, John muttered. ##### A case of mistaken identity. Determined to salvage his vacation, John decided to check out the local attractions. As he walked into a seafood restaurant, a man waved him over enthusiastically. "There you are. Took you long enough, Jerry." John blinked. I think you have the wrong guy." The man laughed. "Oh, Jerry, always joking. Come on, the guys are waiting." Before John could protest, he was whisked away to a table full of strangers, all clapping him on the back and handing him a beer. "Give us one of your famous stories," someone said. John, now fully committed to whatever was happening, cleared his throat and launched into a dramatic tale about his trip to Antarctica, which was actually just a summary of a documentary he had watched last week. The group hung onto every word, roaring with laughter at his exaggerated antics. By the time the night was over, he had won a free dinner and several new best friends. He never found out who Jerry was, but apparently, Jerry was a legend. #### The hotel upgrade. Back at the motel, John discovered that his door key no longer worked. He trudged downstairs to the front desk, where the receptionist handed him a new key without looking up from his crossword puzzle. However, when John stepped inside, he immediately knew something was wrong. His suitcase was gone. His bed was occupied by an elderly woman in a nightgown, holding a remote and watching soap operas at full volume. "AHH, they both screamed. After a frantic moment of apologies and explanations, John stormed back to the front desk. "You gave me the wrong key," he huffed. The receptionist squinted at the register. "Huh. Looks like we double-booked your room. You can either share or take the janitor's closet." John sighed. "I'll take the closet." #### The unintended surfing lesson. The next morning, John decided to at least try the beach. As he stood by the shore, watching surfers gracefully ride the waves, a man approached him. "You here for the lesson?" John hesitated. Sure." Next thing he knew, he was being handed a surfboard and given rapid instructions that sounded like another language. Before he could object, a powerful wave crashed behind him, sending him flying face first into the water. When he finally surfaced, gasping for air, the instructor gave him a thumbs up. "Not bad for a first try, Jerry." John groaned. "Jerry again." #### The escape plan. By the time the weekend was over, John had endured a broken motel room, mistaken identities, an unintentional surfing lesson, and a breakfast buffet where he accidentally ate plastic fruit. It was time to leave. As he checked out, the receptionist handed him a note. "From your dinner buddies," he said. The note read, "Jerry, you were the highlight of our trip. See you next year." John shook his head and chuckled. Maybe his vacation hadn't gone as planned, but at least he had a good story to tell. And maybe, just maybe, he'd come back next year, as Jerry. Title: The Great Ice Cream Fiasco. Elliot Parker had always dreamed of running the best ice cream shop in town. Ever since he was a kid, he had imagined creating wild flavors, serving happy customers, and becoming the ultimate ice cream king. So, when he finally opened Parker's Ice Cream Paradise, he knew he had to do something special to make a name for himself. And that's when inspiration struck: a contest. But not just any contest. A giant Sunday challenge. The rules were simple: anyone who could finish the colossal Mega Mountain Sundae, a 10-pound ice cream creation with every topping imaginable, would win free ice cream for a year. It was a surefire way to attract customers. On the big day, the shop was packed. Excitement buzzed in the air as people gathered to watch brave challengers attempt the impossible. There were teenagers looking to impress their friends, competitive eaters ready for glory, and even a grandmother who claimed she had seen worse back in the war. Elliot was thrilled. Everything was going perfectly until he showed up. Bobby the Bottomless Pit Malone. Bobby was a legend. He had once eaten an entire 30-inch pizza in under 10 minutes. He held the county fair's corn dog eating record. He even made it onto a local TV show for consuming 200 chicken nuggets in one sitting. If anyone could conquer the colossal Mega Mountain Sundae, it was him. The crowd gasped as Bobby took his seat. He cracked his knuckles, grabbed his spoon, and dug in. At first, everything seemed fine. He demolished the first few layers of ice cream with impressive speed. Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry gone in minutes. But then, disaster struck. Halfway through, Bobby's pace slowed. His confident smirk wavered. His spoon trembled. "Uh-oh," someone whispered. "Brain freeze." Bobby's eyes widened. His entire body stiffened. He clutched his head in agony, letting out a dramatic groan before tipping sideways off his chair, landing in an explosion of whipped cream and sprinkles. The crowd erupted into laughter. Phones came out to record the moment. Elliot's best friend, Mia, whispered, "Dude, this is going viral." But the chaos wasn't over yet. As Bobby hit the ground, his foot knocked over a cart stacked with bowls of freshly made blueberry ice cream. The cart rolled forward, right into the Sunday station. The impact sent scoops of ice cream flying across the shop. One hit Mr. Thompson, the town's grumpiest librarian, right in the face. Another splattered against the front window, creating an abstract masterpiece of melted colors. A third landed in the hands of a small child, who looked up at his mother and declared, "Best day ever." Elliot, standing behind the counter, could only watch in slow-motion horror as the final scoop soared through the air, and landed directly on the mayor's head. Silence. Then, the mayor licked the ice cream off his forehead, nodded thoughtfully, and said, "Surprisingly good." The shop burst into applause. Even Bobby, still groaning on the floor, managed a thumbs up. By the next morning, Parker's Ice Cream Paradise was the talk of the town. The video of Bobby's brain freeze had racked up thousands of views online. Customers flooded in, eager to see where the great ice cream fiasco had happened. Elliot never expected his shop's big break to involve flying ice cream and an unconscious competitive eater, but he wasn't complaining. Business was booming, people were happy, and, best of all, he had officially earned the title of the Ice Cream King. And Bobby? He came back a week later, this time for a small cone. The Misadventures of Tim the Taxi Driver. Tim had been a taxi driver for years, and he considered himself an expert at navigating the chaotic streets of New York City. He had seen it all: late-night partygoers, lost tourists, business people too busy to look up from their phones. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to be the most bizarre day of his life. ##### The wrong passenger. The day started like any other. Tim pulled up to a fancy hotel, waiting for his next passenger. A well-dressed man in sunglasses jumped into the back seat and barked, "Follow that car." Tim hesitated. This isn't a movie, buddy." The man threw a $100 bill onto the front seat. "Make it a movie." That was all the convincing Tim needed. He floored the gas, weaving through traffic, only to realize after several blocks that he was chasing an ice cream truck. "Sir, are you sure about this?" Tim asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. The man removed his sunglasses dramatically. They forgot my sprinkles. ####, the confused tourist. After dropping off Mr. No Sprinkles, Tim's next passenger was a cheerful tourist named Greg, who carried a giant foldable map and a backpack that looked heavier than Tim's entire car. "Take me to the Statue of Liberty," Greg said excitedly. Tim turned around. You know that's on an island, right?" Greg blinked. "What? No one told me that." Tim sighed. "Well, I can take you to the ferry." Greg shook his head. "Forget it. Take me to the Eiffel Tower instead." Tim stared at him. "You mean the one in Paris?" Greg looked at his map and frowned. "Wait, am I in the wrong country?" ####, the runaway bride. Just when Tim thought his day couldn't get any stranger, a woman in a wedding dress jumped into his taxi, her veil trailing behind her as she slammed the door shut. "Drive. Just drive," she yelled, out of breath. Tim didn't ask questions at this point, he had learned to just go with the flow. As he sped away, he glanced in the mirror. So, rough day." She exhaled. "You have no idea. My fiancé just admitted that he only proposed because he lost a bet." Tim winced. "Ouch. So, where to?" She shrugged. "Anywhere but the church." Tim thought for a moment. "How about some ice cream? I know a guy who's very passionate about sprinkles." ####, the celebrity mix-up. Tim's last ride of the day was a nervous young man in oversized sunglasses and a hoodie. As soon as he got in, paparazzi surrounded the cab, cameras flashing like crazy. "Oh, great," the passenger groaned. "Not again." Tim squinted at him. Should I know who you are?" The guy sighed. "Everyone thinks I'm a famous pop star, but I'm actually just a librarian." Tim glanced outside, where fans were screaming his passenger's name. "So, do you wanna sign some books or something?" The man groaned. "Just drive." ####, the perfect ending. After the longest day of his career, Tim parked his cab, ready to go home. But just as he was about to turn off the engine, a familiar face knocked on his window. It was Greg, the confused tourist. "Hey, I figured it out," Greg said proudly. "I'm in New York." Tim chuckled. "Glad to hear it, buddy." Greg handed him a postcard. "For all your help." Tim looked down. It was a picture of the Eiffel Tower. He shook his head and laughed. What a day. Title: The Unstoppable Laugh Riot. Charlie Dawson had one goal: to become the funniest stand-up comedian in town. Ever since he was a kid, he loved making people laugh. Pranks, impressions, terrible dad jokes, you name it. So when the town announced an amateur comedy night, Charlie saw his chance to shine. He spent weeks preparing. He tested jokes on his little brother, who usually just rolled his eyes. He tried puns on his mom, who groaned but smiled. He even practiced his delivery in front of the bathroom mirror. By the time the big night arrived, Charlie was ready, or so he thought. The event was held at the town's community center. The place was packed. People from all over had come to see the show, including the mayor, who was rumored to have the world's worst sense of humor. If Charlie could make him laugh, he could make anyone laugh. As Charlie waited backstage, he felt his nerves creeping in. What if no one laughed? What if he forgot his jokes? What if he accidentally told the joke about his Aunt Mildred's bad cooking and she was in the audience? Too late now. His name was called. Charlie took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. He grabbed the microphone, looked out at the expectant crowd, and opened with his best joke. "So, I walked into a bakery and asked for a dozen donuts. The guy asked if I wanted a receipt. I said, 'Nah, I'll just remember them, one bite at a time. Silence. Not a single laugh. Someone coughed. Charlie's stomach sank. Panic set in, and in his nervousness, he grabbed the microphone stand for support. But the stand was loose. It wobbled, then tipped forward, knocking over a table of drinks in the front row. Soda splashed everywhere, soaking none other than the mayor himself. The audience gasped. Charlie froze. Then, a miracle happened. The mayor, sitting there dripping in cola and ice cubes, suddenly burst into laughter. Not just a chuckle, a full, uncontrollable belly laugh. The crowd, stunned at first, joined in. Soon, the entire room was shaking with laughter. Charlie blinked. That wasn't the joke, but I'll take it. The laughter doubled. Encouraged, Charlie rolled with it. He exaggerated his movements, pretending to slip on the spilled soda, flailing his arms like a cartoon character. People howled. Tears streamed down faces. Even the grumpy old librarian in the back was wiping away laughter-induced tears. Charlie realized something: his comedy wasn't in the jokes, it was in the unexpected chaos. So he embraced it. For the next 5 minutes, he improvised like never before. He pretended the microphone stand was a sword and challenged an invisible opponent. He mimicked the mayor's shocked expression from earlier. He attempted to sit on a stool, missed, and fell dramatically to the floor. Every little accident became part of the act. By the time his set ended, the audience was in stitches. People gave him a standing ovation. The mayor, still damp but grinning ear to ear, personally shook Charlie's hand. "That," he said, "was the funniest thing I've ever seen." The next day, videos of Charlie's accidental comedy went viral. People called him the king of unintentional laughter. Offers poured in for him to perform at other events, and suddenly, he had a comedy career. Charlie had set out to tell jokes, but in the end, it was his ability to turn disaster into comedy that made him a star. And Aunt Mildred? She never forgave him for that joke about her cooking.